The kitchen faucet had been dripping for 3 weeks when I finally decided to fix it. Funny how the smallest irritations become unbearable when your entire life starts falling apart. It was past midnight, and I was elbow-deep in pipe fittings when I heard Daphne's voice drifting from the living room. "The stars aligned us together, Cassian," she whispered into her phone, that breathy giggle I hadn't heard in years, coding every word. "I need to feel your energy again." I'm Emmett Ashford, 47 years old, former high school history teacher turned small business owner. I fix computers now, mostly for elderly folks who think the internet is some kind of mystical portal. The irony wasn't lost on me that my wife had apparently found her own mystical portal. The only alignment I needed was the one that kept my left knee from seizing up after 40-hour work weeks. Daphne had been different lately. Cold, distant. Always clutching that phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. Maybe it did. She'd discovered astrology 6 months ago, right around the time her PR career started taking off. Suddenly, everything was about Mercury in retrograde, and Venus rising, and consultations with some guru named Cassian Vega. I'd seen his business card on her dresser, crumpled, with what looked suspiciously like lipstick on the corner. "I can't wait for our session tomorrow," she continued, her voice dropping to that intimate tone she used to reserve for me. "You understand my chart better than anyone." I understood something, all right. My wife was having an affair with a fortune teller. The wrench slipped in my hands, clanging against the pipe. I froze, listening. Daphne's conversation stopped abruptly. "Emmett," she called, "what are you doing?" "Fixing the faucet," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You know, actual work, not consulting the cosmos about leaky pipes." She appeared in the doorway, phone pressed against her chest. Even in the dim light, I could see the flush on her cheeks, guilty as charged. "You don't understand," she said. "Cassian is helping me find my authentic self." "Your authentic self seems to require a lot of private consultations." "Don't be ridiculous." She turned away, but not before I caught the defensive edge in her voice. "He's a spiritual guide. You wouldn't understand." She was right about that. I didn't understand how a woman who'd spent 22 years married to me could suddenly need guidance from some crystal-waving charlatan. But I was beginning to understand that my marriage was over. The next morning, Daphne left early for yoga. She'd been doing a lot of yoga lately. Flexible schedule, apparently. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the business card I'd retrieved from her dresser. Cassian Vega, certified astrologer and spiritual consultant. The address was downtown, above some vegan cafe called Moonbeam Provisions. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Janice. "Drinks tonight? You sound like you need them." Janice tended bar at Murphy's, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody's business before they did. She had radar for relationship trouble. I spent the day installing new software for Mrs. Henderson, an 80-year-old widow who paid me in homemade cookies and gossip. Today's intel was particularly interesting. "That Daphne of yours has been seen around town with some young man," she said, handing me a plate of chocolate chip cookies. "Handsome fellow, long hair, drives one of those fancy electric cars." "Probably just work," I said, though my stomach clenched. "Mm-hmm." Mrs. Henderson's expression suggested she wasn't buying it. "Well, you know what they say about men who drive those silent cars. Sneaky." That evening, I met Janice at Murphy's. The bar was dim and comfortable, filled with the usual crowd of regulars nursing their disappointments. Janice poured me a whiskey without asking. "You look terrible," she said. "What's going on?" I told her about the phone call, the business card, the sudden interest in cosmic guidance. Janice listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Cassian Vega," she repeated when I finished. "I know that name. He comes in here sometimes. Real smooth talker. Always has some woman hanging on his every word about chakras and moon phases." "Women? Plural?" "Oh yeah, guy's got quite the following. Calls them his spiritual seekers. She made air quotes with her fingers. More like spiritual suckers, if you ask me. My phone buzzed. A text from Daphne. Working late again. Don't wait up. Janice saw my expression. Want me to do some digging? What kind of digging? The kind that involves following people and asking uncomfortable questions. I've got friends who know things. I should have said no. Should have confronted Daphne directly, demanded the truth. But something about her betrayal had awakened a darker part of me, the part that wanted evidence, proof, ammunition. Yeah, I said. Dig. 2 days later, Janice called with news. She'd found Cassian's Instagram account, full of inspirational quotes and photos of him looking mysteriously into the distance. More importantly, she'd found something else. He's engaged, she said, to a woman named Helena Marsh. She's pregnant. The information hit me like a physical blow. Not only was my wife having an affair, but she was the other woman in someone else's relationship. A pregnant someone else. There's more, Janice continued. I followed him yesterday. He went from a consultation with some blonde woman to lunch with this Helena girl. Real cozy. The blonde woman, about 5'6", drives a silver Honda, works downtown. Daphne. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to one of Cassian's public seminars. The Moonbeam Provisions Cafe smelled like incense and disappointment. Above it, Cassian's studio was exactly what I'd expected. Tapestries on the walls, crystals everywhere, and enough candles to violate several fire codes. About 20 people sat in folding chairs, mostly women, all gazing adoringly at the man holding court near a large star chart. Cassian Vega was younger than I'd expected, maybe 38, with the kind of carefully cultivated, mystical appearance that probably took an hour to achieve each morning. Long, dark hair, expensive casual clothes, and the confident smile of someone who'd never been punched in the face. I sat in the back, baseball cap pulled low, and listened to him explain how the current planetary alignment was affecting everyone's relationship energy. The universe is calling us to examine our connections, he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Some of you may find that your current partnerships no longer serve your highest good. A woman in the front row nodded enthusiastically. What about when you meet someone who understands your chart completely? Cassian's smile widened. Ah, that's the magic of cosmic compatibility. When two souls are meant to connect, the stars make it inevitable. I wanted to vomit, or laugh, maybe both. After the seminar, I lingered outside, watching the attendees file out. Cassian emerged 20 minutes later, checking his phone. A silver Honda pulled up to the curb. Daphne. She got out and walked directly to him, no hesitation, no looking around. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead, whispered something that made her laugh. Then they walked back toward the studio entrance. I sat in my truck for another hour, watching the lit windows above the cafe. When they finally came back down, Daphne's hair was messed, and her lipstick was gone. Cassian walked her to her car, another intimate kiss, another whispered conversation. As she drove away, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Hey, beautiful, I heard him say as he passed my truck. Yeah, the seminar went great. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. How's the baby? The baby. Helena's baby. I followed him to a modest apartment complex across town. A young woman with auburn hair and a visible pregnancy bump opened the door, throwing her arms around him with genuine joy. This was Helena Marsh, the real victim in Cassian's cosmic con game. Driving home, my mind raced with possibilities. Daphne thought she'd found her soulmate, guided by the stars themselves. Helena thought she was engaged to a faithful man who'd fathered her child. Cassian was playing both of them, probably others too. But I had something none of them expected: patience, intelligence, and a growing desire for revenge that felt as inevitable as any planetary alignment. The stars had aligned them together all right. But I was about to align something much more powerful: evidence witnesses, and the truth. When I got home, Daphne was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I stood in the doorway, watching her fake, peaceful breathing, and smiled for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow, I was going to start documenting everything. The next morning brought the first real snow of the season, covering Crescent Falls in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and innocent. Appearances, I was learning, could be deceiving. Daphne left for work early, kissing my cheek with the same casual affection she'd shown for 22 years. If I hadn't heard that phone call, seen that kiss, I might have believed everything was normal. "Don't forget dinner with the Hendersons tonight," she said, adjusting her scarf in the hallway mirror. "Wouldn't miss it," I lied. I had other plans. After she left, I searched her dresser again. This time, I found more than just Cassian's business card. Tucked behind her jewelry box was a hotel receipt from the Riverside Inn, dated 3 days ago, the same day she'd claimed to be working late on the Morrison account. I photographed everything with my phone, then put it all back exactly as I'd found it. Evidence Gathering 101. Document but don't disturb. My first stop was the Riverside Inn. The desk clerk, a kid who couldn't have been older than 20, was surprisingly helpful when I explained that I was trying to track down my wife's lost earring. "Oh yeah, the blonde lady with the astrology guy," he said. "They're here every Tuesday. Real nice couple, always request the same room." Every Tuesday. I pulled out my phone calendar. For the past 2 months, Daphne had worked late every Tuesday. The Morrison account must have been very demanding. "You wouldn't happen to know what time they usually check out?" "Around noon, usually. But hey, aren't you supposed to know when your wife checks out?" Smart kid. "She handles the reservations," I said smoothly. "I just pay the bills." He laughed. "Don't we all, man? Don't we all?" My next stop was Cassian's studio. The vegan cafe below was busy with the lunch crowd, all organic kale and self-righteousness. I ordered coffee I didn't want and positioned myself where I could watch the stairs leading to the second floor. At 12:30, a woman in her 60s came down, looking dazed and happy. At 1:15, a younger woman with tears on her cheeks. At 2 sao, Daphne. She descended those stairs like she was floating, that same dreamy expression I'd seen the night before. She checked her phone, smiled at something, then headed for the door. I waited 5 minutes, then went upstairs. The studio door was slightly open. I could hear Cassian talking to someone, probably his next appointment. I positioned myself near the window at the end of the hallway, pretending to check my own phone while listening. "The planetary alignment is perfect for new beginnings." His voice carried clearly. "Your husband's energy is completely incompatible with your rising sign." Another marriage consultation. Another woman being told that the stars justified abandoning her commitments. My phone buzzed with a text from Janice. "Found out more about Helena. Works at the library downtown. Seems really sweet. This is going to destroy her." That decided it. I was going to meet Helena Marsh. The Crescent Falls Public Library was a beautiful old building with high ceilings and the kind of quiet that made you whisper automatically. I found Helena in the children's section, reading to a group of preschoolers. She was obviously pregnant, maybe 6 months along, with a gentle voice and genuine smile. After story time ended, I approached her desk. "Helena Marsh?" "Yes?" She looked up with curious green eyes. "I'm wondering if you could help me with some research. I'm looking into local astrologers for a project." Her face lit up. "Oh, are you interested in astrology? My fiancé is an astrologer, Cassian Vega. He's wonderful." The pride in her voice made my chest tight. "Really? I think I've heard of him. How long have you two been together?" "Almost 2 years. We're getting married next month, right before the baby comes." She touched her belly unconsciously. "Cassian says the timing is perfect astrologically." "That's great. He must be very dedicated to his work." "Oh, he is." Sometimes I barely see him with all his consultations. But he's helping so many people find their authentic selves. She paused. You should really book a session with him. He's amazing at relationship compatibility charts. I bet he was. Maybe I will, I said. Thanks for the recommendation. Walking back to my truck, I felt the weight of what I was planning. Helena seemed genuinely happy, genuinely in love. In a few weeks, she was going to learn that her fiancé was a fraud and her future was built on lies. But that wasn't my fault. That was Cassian's choice, and Daphne's. That evening, I sat through dinner with the Hendersons, making small talk while my mind churned with plans. Daphne played the perfect wife, laughing at Mr. Henderson's old jokes and complimenting Mrs. Henderson's roast. You two are so lucky, Mrs. Henderson said as we prepared to leave. 22 years and still so happy together. Daphne squeezed my hand. We are blessed. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed it myself. Later that night, after Daphne had gone to bed, I sat in my home office and started planning. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. Evidence log, day 1. I documented everything: the phone call, the hotel receipt, the Tuesday pattern, Helena's pregnancy, the public displays of affection. I included photos, times, locations. By the time I finished, I had a comprehensive timeline of my wife's affair. But I needed more than documentation. I needed leverage. The next day was Wednesday. According to my research, Cassian held private consultations on Wednesdays. I parked across from his studio at 10 a.m. and waited. The first client arrived at 10:30, a woman in her 40s who looked vaguely familiar. She stayed for an hour. The second client came at noon. Then, at 2 p.m., I saw something interesting. A man in an expensive suit climbed the stairs to Cassian's studio. He didn't look like the typical spiritual seeker. He looked like business. I waited until he left, then followed him to a downtown office building. The directory in the lobby listed him as Robert Chen, attorney at law, divorce specialist. That was curious. Why would Cassian need a divorce lawyer? I spent the rest of the week gathering more evidence. I learned that Cassian drove a white Tesla, lived in a trendy apartment complex, and had a habit of taking different women to lunch at upscale restaurants. I photographed him with at least 3 different clients in compromising situations. But the real breakthrough came on Friday. I was following Cassian from his studio to his apartment when he made an unexpected stop. He pulled into the parking lot of a medical building and went inside. Through the window, I could see him in the waiting room of an urgent care clinic. 30 minutes later, he emerged looking shaken. He sat in his car for a long time, making phone calls. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his body language suggested panic. That evening, Janice called with more intelligence. I've been asking around about your boy Cassian, she said. Turns out he's got some unhappy former clients, women who paid him thousands for spiritual guidance and ended up with broken marriages and empty bank accounts. Thousands? Oh yeah, he's not just selling horoscopes, Emmett. He's selling hope, and hope is expensive. I thought about Daphne's recent spending, the credit card bills she'd been handling herself, the new clothes and jewelry she claimed were work expenses. There's something else, Janice continued. One of his former clients is talking about filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. Seems Cassian promised her that leaving her husband would lead to true love and financial abundance. Instead, she lost her house and her kids. The pieces were falling into place. Cassian wasn't just an adulterer. He was a predator who targeted vulnerable women and destroyed their lives for profit. And my wife was his latest victim. Except Daphne wasn't really a victim, was she? She was a willing participant in someone else's destruction. Helena's destruction. That weekend, I made a decision that would escalate everything beyond the point of return. I was going to book a consultation with Cassian Vega. On Monday morning, I called his studio using a fake name and a voice slightly higher than my normal tone. I'd like to schedule a relationship consultation, I told the receptionist. I'm having some marital difficulties. Of course, she said warmly. Cassian is wonderful with relationship issues. How does Thursday at 3 p.m. sound? Perfect. As I hung up, I realized I was smiling. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I was taking control. The stars had aligned Daphne and Cassian together, but I was about to introduce them to a different kind of cosmic force: consequences. Thursday arrived gray and cold, with the kind of bitter wind that cut through your coat and reminded you that winter in Illinois was not a suggestion. I spent the morning installing a security system for a local dentist, trying to keep my hands busy while my mind rehearsed what I was going to say to Cassian. At 2:45 p.m., I climbed the stairs to his studio, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap I'd borrowed from my neighbor. The receptionist, a young woman with purple hair and enough crystals to stock a geology museum, smiled brightly as I entered. "You must be Michael," she said, consulting her appointment book. "Cassian will be right with you." Michael Thompson was the name I'd given when I booked the consultation. Generic enough to be forgettable, common enough to be believable. The waiting area was designed to be calming: soft music, dim lighting, and enough incense to make my eyes water. I sat on a purple velvet couch and pretended to read a magazine about chakra alignment while studying the framed certificates on the walls. Cassian had impressive credentials, if you believed in that sort of thing. Certified by the International Astrology Association, graduate of the Cosmic Wisdom Institute, member of the Professional Psychic Guild. All very official sounding, all completely meaningless. "Michael?" I looked up to see Cassian standing in the doorway of his inner office. Up close, he was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'9", with the kind of carefully maintained appearance that suggested he spent more on hair products than I did on groceries. "That's me," I said, standing and extending my hand. His handshake was firm but brief, and I noticed he wore several rings that looked expensive. Business was apparently good. Come in," he said, gesturing toward his office. "I can already sense some powerful energy around you." The inner office was even more theatrical than the waiting room. Star charts covered the walls, crystals lined the shelves, and a large telescope pointed toward the window. Cassian's desk was positioned so that clients sat with their backs to the door while he faced them from behind an impressive array of mystical props. "Please sit," he said, settling into his chair and pulling out a legal pad. "Tell me what brings you here today." I'd rehearsed this part carefully. "My wife and I have been having problems," I began, letting a note of genuine pain creep into my voice. "She's been distant lately, secretive. I think she might be seeing someone else." Cassian nodded sympathetically. "That must be very painful for you. How long have you been married?" 22 years. "Ah." He made a note on his pad. "That's a significant astrological cycle. Tell me, when is your birthday?" I gave him a fake date in March, making me an Aries. I'd done enough research to know that Aries men were supposedly aggressive and incompatible with most other signs. "And your wife?" "November 15th. That part was true. Cassian's eyes lit up. "Scorpio. Very passionate sign, very intense. And you're an Aries." He shook his head sadly. "I have to be honest with you, Michael. Fire and water signs rarely work long-term. The cosmic energy is just too different." "So you're saying it's hopeless?" "Not hopeless, but challenging. Scorpio women need deep emotional connection, spiritual understanding. They're drawn to partners who can match their intensity." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Has your wife shown interest in astrology lately? Spiritual practices?" I pretended to think about it. "Actually, yes. She's been seeing some kind of spiritual advisor, getting her chart done." "Excellent." Cassian's enthusiasm was genuine. "That suggests she's ready to embrace her authentic self. The universe may be guiding her toward a more compatible connection." "You mean she should leave me?" I mean, she should follow her heart. The stars don't lie, Michael. When two people are truly meant to be together, the cosmic signs are unmistakable. I nodded slowly, playing the part of the confused husband. This spiritual advisor she's seeing, how can I tell if he's legitimate? Cassian straightened in his chair. Well, credentials are important, of course. Training, certification, experience. But the real test is results. Does she seem happier, more fulfilled, more aligned with her true self? She does seem different. More alive, I guess. Then the universe is working. Cassian smiled that practiced smile. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let go of relationships that no longer serve us. Even after 22 years? Especially after 22 years. Think about it. You were both different people when you got married. You've grown, evolved. It's natural that you might grow in different directions. I let silence fill the room for a moment, then asked the question I'd been building toward. What if this spiritual advisor is married? Or engaged? Cassian's expression didn't change, but I caught a slight tightening around his eyes. What makes you ask that? I'm just wondering about the ethics. If someone is guiding my wife to leave me, shouldn't they be available themselves? Spiritual guidance transcends conventional relationship boundaries, Cassian said carefully. A true teacher helps others find their path regardless of their own situation. So, it would be okay for a married astrologer to encourage someone to leave their spouse? If that's what the stars indicate, yes. I nodded thoughtfully. And what about the astrologer's own family? His wife or fiancée or children? Don't they matter? Now Cassian was definitely uncomfortable. Every situation is unique, Michael. The universe works in mysterious ways. I'm sure it does. I stood up suddenly. You know what? I think I need to process this information. How much do I owe you? The consultation fee is $200, Cassian said, also standing. But we've only been talking for 20 minutes. I usually spend a full hour with new clients. That's okay. You've given me a lot to think about. I paid in cash, thanked him for his time, and left. But instead of going to my truck, I walked around the block and positioned myself where I could watch the studio entrance. At 4:30, Daphne's silver Honda pulled up to the curb. I had my phone ready, camera app open as she got out of the car and walked toward the studio entrance. She looked around nervously before going inside, and I managed to get several clear photos. This time, I decided to get closer. I found a coffee shop across the street with a clear view of Cassian's second-floor windows. The blinds were partially open, and with the lights on inside, I could see silhouettes moving around. At first, they appeared to be sitting at his desk, probably going through the pretense of an actual consultation. But after about 30 minutes, the silhouettes moved closer together. Much closer. I couldn't see details, but I didn't need to. The body language told the whole story. I took photos of the building, the timestamps, Daphne's car in the parking spot. Then I settled in to wait. An hour and 15 minutes after she'd arrived, Daphne emerged from the studio. Her hair was disheveled, her lipstick was gone, and she had that same dreamy expression I'd seen before. Cassian walked her to her car, kissed her goodbye, and watched her drive away. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. I was too far away to hear what he said, but I could guess. He was probably calling Helena, making excuses for why he'd be late for dinner, or why he couldn't see her tonight. As I drove home, I realized that my consultation with Cassian had given me more than just evidence. It had given me insight into his methods, his psychology, his vulnerabilities. He was arrogant, convinced of his own cleverness. He believed his own mystical nonsense just enough to justify his actions, but not enough to let it interfere with his profits. And most importantly, he had no idea that anyone was watching him. That night, Daphne came home in an unusually good mood. She hummed while making dinner, smiled at my jokes, even suggested we watch a movie together. You seem happy, I observed as we settled on the couch. I had a good session with Cassian today, she said, curling up against my shoulder. He's helping me understand some things about myself. Such as? Just life patterns, relationship dynamics, ways I might have been holding myself back. I almost laughed. Cassian was certainly helping her understand relationship dynamics, just not the way she thought. That's great, honey, I said, kissing the top of her head. I want you to be happy. And I meant it, in a way. I did want her to be happy. I just wanted her to face the consequences of her choices first. The next morning, I called Helena at the library. Helena, this is Michael Thompson. We spoke last week about astrology research. Oh yes, hello. Did you end up booking a session with Cassian? I did, actually. Very enlightening. I was wondering if I could ask you a few more questions about his work. Maybe we could meet for coffee. There was a pause. Well, I suppose that would be okay. I have a break at 2 this afternoon. Perfect. How about that little cafe below his studio? Moonbeam Provisions? Sure, I'll see you there. As I hung up, I felt a familiar pang of guilt. Helena was innocent in all this, and I was about to shatter her world. But she deserved to know the truth before she married a fraud and gave her child his name. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people see reality, even when it hurts. The stars had aligned Daphne and Cassian together, but they'd also aligned me with the evidence I needed to expose them both. And that alignment was about to become very, very public. Helena was already waiting when I arrived at Moonbeam Provisions, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a cup of herbal tea. She looked tired, and I noticed dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there the week before. Michael, she said, standing to shake my hand. Thanks for meeting me. Up close, her pregnancy was more obvious. She was definitely in her 3rd trimester, probably due within the next 6 to 8 weeks. The timing made everything worse. How are you feeling? I asked as we sat down. Oh, you know, tired, uncomfortable, excited. She touched her belly. The baby's been very active lately. Cassian says that means he's going to be a powerful Sagittarius. He? We're having a boy. Her smile was radiant. Cassian is so excited to be a father, he's already planning the baby's astrological chart. I ordered coffee I didn't want and tried to figure out how to begin. How do you tell a pregnant woman that her fiancé is cheating on her? How do you destroy someone's happiness, even when it's built on lies? So, Helena said, how was your consultation with Cassian? Did he help with your relationship issues? It was educational, I said carefully. He certainly has strong opinions about compatibility. He's amazing at relationship counseling. He helped my friend Sarah work through some problems with her husband last year. Really? What kind of problems? Oh, the usual. Communication issues, growing apart, that sort of thing. Helena's expression grew thoughtful. Actually, Sarah ended up getting divorced. But Cassian said it was for the best, that her husband's energy was completely wrong for her. Another marriage destroyed. I wondered how many others there had been. Helena, I said, choosing my words carefully, what do you know about Cassian's other clients? What do you mean? I mean, does he talk about them? The people he counsels? She looked uncomfortable. Well, he can't discuss specifics because of confidentiality, but he does mention general situations sometimes. Why? I'm just curious about his success rate, whether his advice actually helps people. Of course it helps people. He's helped me understand so much about myself, about our relationship. She paused. Why are you asking these questions? I took a deep breath. There was no gentle way to do this. Helena, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be difficult to hear. My name isn't really Michael Thompson. Her eyes widened. What? My name is Emmett Ashford, and I think Cassian is having an affair with my wife. The color drained from her face. That's impossible. Cassian would never. I have proof, I said gently. Photos, recordings, documentation. I'm sorry, Helena. I'm so sorry. She stared at me for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. You're lying. I wish I was. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken. Daphne entering the studio, Cassian walking her to her car, the intimate kiss, the hotel receipts, the timeline of Tuesday meetings. Helena's breathing became shallow as she looked through the evidence. This can't be real. There's more, I said, hating myself for what I was about to do. Daphne isn't his only client who he's counseling this way. I think there are others. No. Helena stood up abruptly, knocking over her tea. No, you're wrong. Cassian loves me. We're getting married. We're having a baby. Helena, please sit down. I have to go. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, but I caught up with her on the sidewalk. Helena, wait. She turned around, and I saw tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this to me? What do you want? I want the truth to come out, I said. And I think you deserve to know what kind of man you're about to marry. He's a good man. He's spiritual. He's kind. He helps people. He helps people destroy their marriages so he can take advantage of them emotionally and financially. Helena leaned against the building, one hand on her belly, the other pressed to her forehead. I think I'm going to be sick. Let me drive you home. No. I need to talk to Cassian. There has to be an explanation. Helena, please don't confront him yet. Let me show you more evidence first. If I'm wrong, you can expose me as a liar. But if I'm right... She looked up at the second-floor windows of Cassian's studio. If you're right, then my entire life is a lie. I'm sorry, I said again. I really am. Helena was quiet for a long moment, then she pulled out her phone. What's your real number? I gave it to her, and she typed it in. I need time to think, she said. But if what you're saying is true, I want to see all the evidence. Of course. And I want to catch him myself. That surprised me. What do you mean? I mean, if Cassian is cheating on me, I want to see it with my own eyes. I want proof that can't be explained away or rationalized. I studied her face. Beneath the tears and shock, I saw something harder, something angry. That could be arranged, I said. Good. Helena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because if you're telling the truth, Cassian Vega is about to learn that pregnant women can be very, very dangerous when they're betrayed. We exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again the next day. As I watched Helena walk to her car, I realized that I might have just gained a very powerful ally. That evening, Daphne was unusually quiet during dinner. She kept checking her phone and seemed distracted. Everything okay? I asked. Just work stuff, she said, but her tone was off. Emmett, can I ask you something? Sure. If you found out I was unhappy in our marriage, what would you do? The question caught me off guard. Are you unhappy? I'm asking hypothetically. I considered my answer carefully. I guess I'd want to know why, and I'd want to try to fix whatever was wrong. But what if it couldn't be fixed? What if we'd just grown into different people? Then I suppose we'd have to figure out how to move forward. Together or apart? Daphne nodded slowly. And you wouldn't be angry? I'd be hurt, I said honestly. But anger wouldn't change anything. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're a good man, Emmett. I hope you know that. The guilt in her voice was unmistakable. She was working up to something, probably a confession or a request for separation. Cassian had likely advised her to start preparing me for the end of our marriage. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. Later that night, after Daphne had gone to bed, I sat in my office organizing all the evidence I'd collected. Photos, receipts, recordings, timelines, witness statements. I had enough material to destroy both Cassian and Daphne's reputations completely. But I wanted more than just exposure. I wanted consequences. I opened my laptop and started researching. By morning, I had a plan that would give Helena the proof she needed and set up the final confrontation that would end this whole mess. My phone buzzed with a text from Helena. I couldn't sleep. Can we meet earlier today? I replied, absolutely. And Helena, bring a camera. The stars had aligned Daphne and Cassian together, but they'd also aligned me with someone who had just as much reason to want revenge. And pregnant women, as Helena had pointed out, could be very dangerous when betrayed. Helena looked different when we met the next morning. The shock had been replaced by something harder, more focused. She'd done her own research overnight, and the results weren't pretty. I went through Cassian's things, she said without preamble, as we sat in my truck outside the library. His laptop, his phone bills, his credit card statements. Find anything interesting? 3 different women have been paying him for extended spiritual guidance over the past 6 months. One of them paid him $8,000. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. $8,000, Emmett. For what? To destroy her marriage? Probably. There's more. He's been charging luxury dinners, hotel rooms, even jewelry to his business account, all of it tax-deductible as client entertainment. I whistled low. That's fraud. It gets worse. I found emails between him and someone named Robert Chen, a lawyer. They're discussing something called asset protection strategies and premarital financial planning. The divorce lawyer I'd seen visiting Cassian's office. He's planning to leave you. Not just leave me. According to these emails, he's been moving money around, setting up accounts I don't know about. He's been planning this for months. Helena's voice cracked on the last word, and I saw tears threatening again. But she wiped them away angrily. I'm not going to cry anymore, she said. I'm going to get even. What did you have in mind? She pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. I sent him this an hour ago. The message read, Surprise! I got off work early today. Want to have lunch at that new place downtown? I have something exciting to tell you about the baby. He responded immediately, Helena continued, showing me Cassian's reply. Of course. Can't wait to hear your news. Meet you at Riverside Bistro at noon? Riverside Bistro was directly across the street from the Riverside Inn, where Cassian had been meeting Daphne every Tuesday. Clever, I said. But what's the plan? Simple. I'm going to lunch with my loving fiancée while you document everything. Then, at exactly 1:30, I'm going to excuse myself to use the restroom. That's when you call his phone. And say what? You're going to be Michael Thompson again. You're going to tell him you need an emergency consultation because you just caught your wife cheating and you're thinking about confronting the other man. I was beginning to see the beauty of her plan. He'll have to choose between cutting lunch short with you or missing out on a lucrative emergency session. Exactly. And knowing Cassian, he'll choose the money. He'll make some excuse about a client crisis and rush back to his studio, where Daphne will probably be waiting for their regular Tuesday appointment, which starts at 2 p.m. according to the pattern you documented. Helena's smile was cold. I'll follow him there, and we'll finally have proof that can't be explained away. It was a good plan, but I saw a potential problem. Helena, are you sure you want to see this? Actually witnessing them together? It's going to be brutal. I need to see it, she said firmly. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I decide how to destroy him. At 11:45, we took our positions. Helena went into Riverside Bistro while I set up surveillance from a coffee shop across the street. I had a clear view of both the restaurant and the hotel entrance. Cassian arrived precisely at noon, looking relaxed and happy. Through the restaurant window, I could see him kiss Helena hello and settle into their booth. They looked like any other expectant couple enjoying lunch together. At 12:30, Daphne's Honda pulled into the hotel parking lot. She sat in her car for a few minutes, checking her phone, then went inside, probably getting their usual room ready for Cassian's arrival. At 1:30 exactly, I saw Helena get up from the table and head toward the restroom. I dialed Cassian's number. Cassian Vega speaking. Cassian, this is Michael Thompson. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having a crisis. Michael? What's wrong? I confronted my wife about the affair. She admitted everything. She's been seeing her astrologer for months. I let my voice break slightly. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about going to his office and having it out with him. Michael, please don't do anything rash. Where are you right now? Sitting in my car outside his studio. I just want to understand why he destroyed my marriage. Listen to me very carefully, Cassian said, his voice taking on an urgent tone. Do not confront him directly. That could make everything worse. Can you meet me at my office in 20 minutes? We need to discuss this properly. Through the restaurant window, I saw Helena return to the table. Cassian was already signaling for the check. You'd do that? I asked, playing the grateful victim. Even though you're busy? This is exactly the kind of crisis situation I'm here for, Cassian said. Give me 20 minutes. He hung up, and I watched him make excuses to Helena. Even from across the street, I could see her disappointment as he kissed her goodbye and hurried out of the restaurant. Helena emerged a few minutes later and walked to her car. She drove slowly toward downtown while I followed at a distance. Cassian's white Tesla was already parked outside his studio. We met in the parking lot of a closed gas station 2 blocks away. He took the bait, Helena said. Told me he had a client emergency, someone threatening self-harm. Very concerned, very professional. And you believed him? I pretended to, asked if I could help, offered to come with him. He said it was too dangerous, that I needed to think about the baby. Thoughtful of him. Helena's laugh was bitter. Oh, he's very thoughtful, right up until the moment he isn't. We drove back to Cassian's studio and parked where we could see both the entrance and the second-floor windows. At 2:05, Daphne's Honda appeared. There she is, I said. Helena raised a pair of binoculars she'd brought. Blonde, about 45, wearing a blue coat? That's her. We watched Daphne enter the building. A few minutes later, lights came on in Cassian's office windows. Can you see anything? I asked. Helena adjusted the binoculars. They're sitting at his desk. Looks like they're talking. She paused. Now he's showing her some kind of chart. Very professional so far. We waited. At 2:30, Helena sucked in a sharp breath. What? Oh God, they're kissing. I started taking photos with my phone's telephoto lens. The angle wasn't perfect, but the silhouettes in the window were clear enough to be damning. He's got his hands in her hair, Helena whispered, her voice hollow. They're moving away from the window. The lights in Cassian's office went out. Helena lowered the binoculars and turned to me. I think I'm going to be sick. Do you need me to drive you home? No. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I need to go up there. Helena, that's not a good idea. I need to see his face when he realizes he's been caught. Before I could stop her, she was out of my truck and walking toward the studio entrance. I grabbed my phone and followed her. The door to the building was unlocked. Helena climbed the stairs with surprising speed for someone in her condition, and I struggled to keep up. The studio's outer door was closed, but we could hear voices from inside. Helena didn't knock. She simply turned the handle and walked in. The receptionist's desk was empty. Apparently, she only worked mornings. The door to Cassian's inner office was partially open, and through it, we could hear Daphne's voice. The stars really did align us together, didn't they? In every possible way, Cassian replied. Your chart shows that this connection was inevitable. Helena looked at me, her face pale but determined. Then she pushed open the office door. Cassian and Daphne were on the couch behind his desk, fully clothed, but obviously intimate. Daphne's blouse was unbuttoned. Cassian's shirt was untucked, and they were tangled together like teenagers. They froze when they saw us. "Helena?" Cassian scrambled to his feet, frantically tucking in his shirt. "What are you doing here?" "Getting proof," Helena said calmly. She held up her phone, which had been recording video since we entered the building. "Say hello to YouTube, Cassian." Daphne looked from Helena to me, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and horror. "Emmett," she whispered. "Hello, honey," I said. "How was your consultation?" The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Helena's phone, still recording everything. Cassian found his voice first. "This isn't what it looks like." Helena laughed, a sound with no humor in it whatsoever. "Really? Because it looks like my fiancé is having an affair with a married woman while I'm pregnant with his child." "Helena, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How the stars aligned you with every desperate housewife in Crescent Falls? How you've been stealing money from your clients while planning to abandon your pregnant fiancé?" Cassian's face went white. "You went through my things." "I went through our things," Helena corrected. "The laptop we bought together, the credit cards I'm listed on, the bank accounts that have my name on them too." Daphne was trying to button her blouse with shaking hands. "Emmett, I can explain." "Actually," I said, "I'd rather you didn't. I think Helena's video speaks for itself." "You can't use that," Cassian said desperately. "It's illegal to record someone without consent." "Actually," Helena replied, "Illinois is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation agrees to the recording, it's perfectly legal. And since I'm the one holding the phone, I consent." I was impressed. Helena had done her homework. "Besides," she continued, "I'm not planning to use this in court. I'm planning to use it everywhere else." Cassian lunged toward her, trying to grab the phone, but I stepped between them. "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "Assault charges would just make everything worse for you." Helena was already uploading the video to her cloud storage. "Too late anyway. It's already backed up in 3 different places." Daphne finally got her blouse buttoned and stood up on unsteady legs. "Emmett, please, we need to talk." "No," I said. "We really don't. I think 22 years of marriage deserves better than a conversation in your lover's office." "But I love you," she said, tears starting to flow. "This was just... I was confused. The stars..." "The stars didn't make you betray me," I said. "You made that choice all by yourself." Helena was texting rapidly on her phone. "I'm sending copies of this video to everyone in Cassian's contact list," she announced. "All his clients, all his business associates, everyone who thinks he's some kind of spiritual guru." "Helena, please," Cassian begged. "Think about the baby. Think about our future." "I am thinking about the baby," Helena replied. "I'm thinking about how he deserves better than a father who's a fraud and a cheat." She pulled off her engagement ring and threw it at Cassian's feet. "Consider our engagement terminated." "You can't do this," Cassian said. "I'll sue you for defamation." "With what money?" Helena asked. "The money you stole from your clients? The money you've been hiding from me? Good luck explaining that to a judge." I put my hand on Helena's shoulder. "We should go." She nodded, then turned back to Cassian and Daphne one last time. "The stars aligned you together," she said. "But they also aligned you with the consequences of your choices. Enjoy explaining this to everyone." As we left the studio, I could hear Cassian and Daphne arguing behind us, their voices rising in panic and recrimination. Outside, Helena leaned against my truck and took a deep breath. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Terrible," she said. "And satisfied. And terrified." She touched her belly, but mostly relieved. "At least now I know the truth." "What happens now?" Helena's smile was grim. "Now we watch their world fall apart." She was right. By evening, the video had been shared hundreds of times. Cassian's business phone was ringing constantly with angry former clients demanding refunds. Daphne's co-workers were texting her with questions she couldn't answer. The stars had aligned them together, all right, but they'd also aligned them with the consequences of their betrayal, and those consequences were just getting started. The next morning brought the kind of chaos that would have made ancient Greek dramatists weep with joy. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. with calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if it was true that Daphne had been caught in a compromising position with some mystical charlatan. Small towns love a scandal, and Crescent Falls was no exception. Helena called at 7:30. "Have you seen the news?" "What news?" Channel 7 picked up the story. Local astrologer caught in affair scandal. They're running it every half hour. I turned on the television, and there it was. A heavily pixelated version of Helena's video, with a reporter standing outside Cassian's studio explaining how a spiritual advisor had been exposed for unethical relationships with multiple clients. The reporter, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and practiced concern, was interviewing Mrs. Henderson from down the street. "I always thought there was something fishy about that man," Mrs. Henderson was saying. "Driving around in that fancy electric car, telling married women to leave their husbands. It's not natural. The Better Business Bureau has received multiple complaints about Mr. Vega's business practices," the reporter continued, "and several former clients are considering legal action. I had to admire Helena's efficiency. In less than 18 hours, she'd managed to destroy Cassian's reputation completely." My phone rang again. This time it was Janice. "Holy hell, Emmett," she said without preamble. "You and that pregnant girl really went nuclear, didn't you?" "We just documented the truth." "Well, the truth is all over social media now. Cassian's Instagram account got flooded with angry comments before he shut it down. Someone posted screenshots of his DMs with at least 6 different women. 6? That's just what they found so far. Apparently he had a whole system worked out. Target unhappy wives, convince them their marriages are cosmically doomed, then offer private healing sessions for premium rates. I thought about all the women I'd seen entering and leaving his studio, all the broken marriages he'd probably encouraged. How many lives do you think he destroyed? Hard to say, but the local paper is running a story tomorrow about his business practices. They interviewed some of his former clients. And Daphne? Janice's tone grew more serious. "She's not doing well, Emmett. Word is her boss put her on administrative leave pending an investigation. Something about bringing negative publicity to the company." I felt a flicker of sympathy, quickly suppressed. Daphne had made her choices. "There's something else," Janice continued. "Helena asked me to tell you that she's meeting with a lawyer today, not just for the custody stuff. Apparently, Cassian had been forging her signature on some financial documents." That was news to me. "What kind of documents?" "Loan applications, mostly. He'd been borrowing money against her credit rating without telling her. She's looking at maybe $50,000 in debt she didn't know about." The scope of Cassian's deception was staggering. He hadn't just been cheating on Helena, he'd been systematically defrauding her. At 10 a.m., I drove to the studio district to see the aftermath firsthand. Cassian's building was surrounded by news vans and angry people holding signs. Someone had spray-painted fraud across his office windows, and the vegan cafe below had posted a notice that they were evaluating their tenant relationships. I parked across the street and watched the show. A group of middle-aged women, probably former clients, were being interviewed by reporters. Their stories were remarkably similar. Cassian had convinced them that their marriages were astrologically incompatible, charged them thousands for spiritual guidance, and encouraged them to make destructive life choices. One woman, crying as she spoke to the camera, explained how she'd lost custody of her children after following Cassian's advice to leave her husband. "He told me the stars said I needed to embrace my authentic self," she sobbed. "He said my ex-husband's energy was toxic. Now I see my kids every other weekend, and I'm living in a studio apartment." Another woman described paying Cassian $8,000 for a cosmic compatibility analysis, that had convinced her to divorce her husband of 15 years. He said we were astrologically doomed, she explained. Said the universe was calling me to a higher love. Turns out the universe was calling me to bankruptcy court. As I watched, Helena arrived and joined the crowd. She wasn't holding a sign or giving interviews. She was just standing there, 7 months pregnant, letting everyone see what Cassian had done to her. The visual was powerful. A betrayed pregnant woman surrounded by the wreckage of other people's lives, all destroyed by the same manipulative fraud. A reporter approached Helena, but she shook her head and pointed to a prepared statement she'd apparently distributed to the media. I couldn't read it from my position, but I could see it was several pages long. My phone buzzed with a text from Helena. "Can you meet me at Murphy's tonight? I want to show you something." That evening, I found Helena and Janice sitting in a corner booth at Murphy's, surrounded by documents and looking like they were planning a military campaign. "Emmett," Helena said as I sat down, "we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Janice slid a folder across the table. "The kind where Cassian might actually get away with most of this." I opened the folder and found legal documents, financial records, and what looked like correspondence with attorneys. "Turns out our boy Cassian has been very careful about covering his tracks," Helena explained. "All the money he took from clients was technically payment for services rendered. The loans he took out in my name were legal, because we're engaged and I'm listed as a co-applicant on his business accounts." "What about the affair?" "Adultery isn't illegal in Illinois," Janice said. "Morally reprehensible, sure, but not criminal." Helena leaned forward. "The only real crime we can prove is the financial fraud, and even that's complicated because of our relationship status." "So he walks away?" "Not necessarily," Helena said, her eyes gleaming. "That's where you come in." She pulled out another document, this one official-looking with a court seal. "I filed for an emergency restraining order this morning," she explained. "Claimed that Cassian has been financially abusing me and that I'm afraid for my safety and the baby's safety." "Are you?" "I am now. This morning, he showed up at my apartment demanding that I retract my statement to the media. When I refused, he got aggressive." Janice nodded grimly. "I saw the bruises on her wrist." Helena rolled up her sleeve, revealing dark fingerprints where someone had grabbed her roughly. "He did that?" "He did that," Helena confirmed. "In front of my neighbor, who's willing to testify. The restraining order was approved immediately." "Okay, but how does that help with the financial stuff?" Helena's smile was predatory. "Because the restraining order gives me legal grounds to freeze all of our joint accounts pending a full financial audit. And once the court starts digging into his business practices, they'll find everything," I finished. "Everything," she agreed. "The forged documents, the hidden accounts, the money he's been skimming from clients. All of it." Janice raised her beer. "To cosmic justice." "To cosmic justice," Helena and I echoed. Over the next week, I watched Cassian's world collapse in real time. The financial audit revealed that he'd been running what amounted to a sophisticated con game, targeting vulnerable women and systematically draining their resources while destroying their families. The local district attorney announced that his office was opening a criminal investigation into Cassian's business practices. 3 former clients filed civil lawsuits seeking damages. The IRS began auditing his tax returns going back 5 years. But the most satisfying development was entirely unplanned. I was having coffee at Moonbeam Provisions, watching the "For Rent" signs go up in Cassian's former studio, when I overheard 2 women talking at the next table. "Did you hear about Daphne Ashford?" one of them said. "The PR woman who was sleeping with that fake astrologer?" "That's her. Apparently her husband is some kind of computer genius. He's been documenting everything for months." Everything? Every lie, every affair, every penny she spent on that fraud. He's got recordings, photos, financial records, the works. Wow. Remind me never to cheat on a tech guy. I heard he's not even asking for alimony in the divorce. Just wants her out of his life completely. Smart man. Let her figure out how to rebuild her reputation on her own. That last part wasn't entirely true. I was asking for alimony. Specifically, I was asking that Daphne pay me support while I rebuilt my business reputation that her scandal had damaged. My lawyer thought we had an excellent case, but the women were right about one thing. I wanted Daphne out of my life completely. The divorce papers were served the following Monday. Daphne tried calling me afterward, but I let it go to voicemail. Emmett, please, her recorded voice pleaded. We need to talk. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. 22 years has to count for something. 22 years did count for something. It counted as evidence of how much she'd been willing to throw away for a few months with a manipulative fraud. Helena had her baby 3 weeks later, a healthy boy she named David, after her father. Cassian wasn't at the hospital. He was in county lookup, arrested on charges of fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. The local paper ran a follow-up story 6 months later. Cassian had been sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to his victims. His astrology certification had been revoked, and he was banned from operating any kind of counseling or spiritual guidance business. Daphne had moved to another state, reportedly working for a small marketing firm under her maiden name. According to Janice's sources, she was still single and struggling to rebuild her career. Helena and I stayed in touch. Not romantically. We'd both had enough of complicated relationships for a while, but as friends who'd been through something extraordinary together. Do you ever regret it? She asked me one evening as we watched David sleep in his crib. Regret what? Exposing them, destroying their lives. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said finally. They destroyed their own lives. I just documented it. The stars aligned them together, Helena said, echoing Daphne's words from that first phone call. Yeah, I agreed, but they also aligned them with the consequences of their choices. Outside Helena's window, the stars were bright and clear in the Illinois sky. Somewhere up there, according to Cassian's philosophy, cosmic forces were determining human destiny. But down here on Earth, I'd learned something more practical. The most powerful force in the universe isn't written in the stars. It's the truth. And the truth, as Cassian and Daphne had discovered, has a way of aligning everything exactly where it belongs.